You're listening to the Common Fan Podcast, a Husker football podcast for the common fan by the common fan.
Welcome back to the Common Fan Podcast. I am TJ Burkle, as always, alongside Matty Owens, Sr. and Geoff in Lincoln. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@CommonFanGBR. You can also find us now as the official Nebraska podcast of the College Huddle. The College Huddle has quickly become the largest independent online college sports community, and we are thrilled to be part of it. Check out thecollegehuddle.com to learn more. We've got a Nebraska page on there. We've got a Common Fan Podcast page on there. I even submitted a written article this week. So we're just putting all kinds of stuff out there for the common fans. And there's going to be a lot more opportunities for really cool collaborations and content with the College Huddle folks. In case you were curious, common fans, Sunday dinner at the Burkle House featured New York strips from certified Piedmontese beef. This premium Nebraska product is raised and grazed in the Nebraska Sandhills, and we, the common fans, can't get enough. As the weather warms up and we're officially entering grilling season, you've got to try their tender steaks, delicious burgers, and so much more. Stop by your local Mercado Butcher Shop at 30th and Yankee Hill or 84th and Havelock in Lincoln, and also at 162nd and Maple in Omaha. You can also go to cpbeef.com to get certified Piedmontese beef products shipped right to your front door anywhere across all 50 states. So make it happen, common fans. Get to your local Mercado Butcher Shop or visit cpbeef.com. Certified Piedmontese, powering the Husker football team and powering the Common Fan Podcast. Friend of the program, Evan Bland from the Omaha World Herald is back with us today. Evan, it's nice to have you back with the Common Fans.
Thanks for having me. I'm a common writer. Happy to chat. What's going on?
Thanks for coming back.
He's humble too. Humble man.
Yeah, you may be a common writer, but uncommonly exceptional quality of your writing.
You guys are too kind. We're in the throes of spring here too, when you got to get a little creative sometimes with the storylines. Like it's there's no game this week, so sometimes you gotta kind of find something else.
Do you kids to that point where, I don't know, a couple weeks into spring ball here, do you have a routine that you do to, prepare for spring ball every year? Do you start doing push-ups and sit-ups and, 3-man monkey rolls? Do you go out and hit the sled? Anything, or maybe an Oklahoma drill here and there with other members of the media?
And there was a time when I think Nebraska insisted on calling it the Nebraska drill too, instead of the Oklahoma drill. But, for obvious reasons. But, I don't know, like I run, but I often make this joke, like in the spring, it always starts really cold and it's nice by the end. And when we go to practice or to talk with players or coaches, you kind of wind around the northwest section of Memorial Stadium. And anybody who's been around that as a student or on game day, like, that those winds out of the north are just brutal. And so like a few weeks ago, it was about as hard and cold as I can ever remember it being. Like I'm tearing up by the time I'm getting inside the Hawks Center. And then, just a couple of days ago, we're back and the weather's nice. And it's like, okay, I feel like I'm part of the transition from winter to spring, just in that little spot outside of the Husker Kingdom right there. So, we're getting into it. I'm not doing mat drills. I'm not doing, I'm not putting on the pads, but it's its own sort of endurance test in a different way, I suppose.
Okay. Well, let's do a hypothetical then. Okay, so let's say the Nebraska media was doing some training, and there was an Oklahoma drill amongst the Nebraska media. Who would you most like to face off against in an Oklahoma drill? And who is best suited to be successful doing Oklahoma drills other than maybe Adam Carricker?
That's not fair. That's not fair.
I don't know. I mean, look, like none of us, I'd like to think a lot of us try to take care of ourselves as we can. I don't think anybody's um, preparing for that. There'd be a lot of pulled hammies, bruised egos, probably viral social media.
Exactly. This is what the people
clips.
want, Evan. This is what the people want.
Look, I mean, as much hype as the spring league has gotten at Nebraska, if there was a media competition, it'd be fun. I think what would be cool would be some sort of like an NFL combine style deal.
Yes.
So like let's run the 40, let's do the cone drill. Let's see how bad all of our vertical leaps are. The bench press could be a thing.
Yes.
So I think that would be fun. Let's try to break that down and get a scout for everybody for whatever
That's actually a brilliant idea
of Sunday football we want to play.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Do it for charity or something. I think you'd get massive views and interest in something like that.
We could tie that into the Boyd Epley strength and conditioning video I'm going to do with him in the near future.
There you go. He's the man. Yeah. You know how Nebraska used to put out, and they still do, I think sometimes, but the testing numbers for all the players, like they could post that for my colleagues and myself, and those things would be haunting us, I think, for the rest of our days. So I probably need to do some training before lacing them up for that.
Jeff, is that the special where Boyd works with someone who has never exercised in his life? Is that what that special is?
And
think about the clicks and the likes we would get off of that.
Yeah,
the subscribers we would get off of that.
This was my big idea
for
the
us,
Olympics.
Common fans.
My big idea for the Olympics, and maybe it would apply here, is like you don't know how impressive these physical feats are unless you like superimposed like the average person or the common fan over top of that. So like an Olympic swimmer, I want to see like some guy who just gets in the pool and like, let's see that pace and how much farther ahead these elite swimmers are or whatever. Like I think that standard needs to be set.
The just one lane for the common fan.
Right.
Yeah. For every event.
I think too many people will die. There'd be too many deaths. A lot of liability there. Let's think about it from a different angle then. Just kind of stay with us. This is fun. March Madness is over. So if we did like a bracket of Husker or Nebraska media members, who do you think would be the 4 number 1 seeds in your opinion?
For what? What are we doing for basketball?
Well, so I don't know.
Just pure athleticism?
No, just whatever criteria you want to apply to it.
Well,
you could do football. You could do all media members.
You could do heft, as a journalist. Not heft, not physical heft, like
like strength,
like chops.
I mean, you guys probably need to set the bar for this. Like, I'm part of the field here. I don't know that I can set the field, but
that's fair.
I can certainly agree with what you guys put out there. We have a wide range of ages and like ability levels, I guess physical ability levels in the market. I think would be competitive. Like if you put our media pool up against some other Big Ten media pool, that could be fun. Like you see student managers in basketball games, they always play a game against like the student managers from another team. I think our media market could be competitive in some sort of a Big Ten competition.
Sure. Nice. I think you guys, this is an idea for next March Madness. We got a lot of time to plan it. So let's work through let's work through this behind the scenes. Yeah. We'll start working on this. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, well, I think we're here to talk about Nebraska football, Evan. So you had a piece right around the start of spring ball, kind of about the culture in year 2 for Matt Rule's program. Guys know the coaches, they know the schemes better. The veterans are helping the younger guys, and that I'm a sucker for when the players and the coaches start talking about that stuff. But common fans have been down this road a time or two in the last 10, 15 years. And we've been through too many coaching changes, right? And so what's your read on the vibe? What does it indicate about the program? And is it any different than maybe some of the other coaching experiments that didn't work as well as we wanted?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I try to be really intentional about every year. It's kind of like when you get to like spring training in baseball and everybody's bigger, faster, and stronger, and you're like, oh, they're the best. But like, is that really true, or is that just kind of through their individual lens? Like you often hear, I think in the spring from football teams, we're closer than we've ever been. Well, usually that's because it's a guy who's now an upperclassman, who's now invested in the program, who previously had been a freshman and was just sort of onboarding. So like that was their perspective on things. So I try to, be as objective as possible when you hear stuff like that. But it does seem like that year two sort of stability is setting in. And I think you'd probably see that at a lot of programs, but like to me, the biggest transition is where it goes from the coaches sort of laying down, here's what we expect, to the players self-policing it. And, anybody who remembers the great Nebraska teams or really any great teams in college football, like it's generally, those are player-led teams. And I think you got a sense of that even through a few weeks of spring here. And in the story that you're referencing, I mean, I mentioned Thomas Fidone, who's a guy who has had his share of injuries, who's sort of been coming into his own. And I think this year is another popular candidate to break out. But like, he's not talking about his own workouts or his injuries. Like he's talking about his teammates and their standards. And he's talking about the offense and how far it's come along. And like, those are the sorts of things that I listen for when a guy can speak intelligently and in detail about his teammates, especially younger guys, that I think are really positive signs. Isaac Gifford had a really good thought a couple of days, or I guess it was yesterday after practice, where he said sort of the three steps when you are integrated into a program like this is you learn the process, you live the process, and then you defend the process. And when you're defending the process, that's when you're leading, that's when you're holding others accountable to make sure that they're living the process as well. And so I think you're seeing a lot of examples of that. And Phelan Sanford, who's not on the team anymore, he's interning with the strength program. Like he is speaking intelligently about it and teaching other guys about it. So like it's gone. You've seen that shift from this is Matt Rule's thing and this is the staff's thing to like now this is the players' thing. They know what to expect. They're all in on the process, at least to the large majority of them. And how that translates to wins and losses in the fall remains to be seen. But like for years, it seems like the thing has been, what's Nebraska's identity? What does it believe in? What does it want to be? And I think there's finally some definition to that, not just among the coaches now, but among the players too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Evan, with it being spring ball, there's one thing that we did notice, and we've kind of talked about it on previous episodes, but they're doing a thing during spring ball now where they've got 3 teams. I think that's kind of interesting. What is it? The Bug Eaters, the Rattlesnake Boys, and the Old Gold Knights. First of all, I understand the Bug Eaters reference, but pardon my being naive. I have no idea what Rattlesnake Boys and Old Gold Knights refers to. Maybe you do, but I don't. It's a mix of vets and young dudes. I'm just kind of curious, how does that work? Like, I know everybody gets more reps, but is it going well? I don't know how they keep score when you have 3 teams, and just how do you measure metrics for like winning and losing in that scenario?
Well, first of all, those other names, those are all former Nebraska team names. Like they were once the Old Gold Knights. They were once the Rattlesnake Boys, like way back in the day. So it's sort of a nod at the history of the program. But I mean, yeah, it's a new fun thing. Where you've got the team divided into 3 different offenses, 3 different defenses, and then they rotate and play each other. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. A couple of the guys have said, like, you don't even know who wins the day because like you're on one offense or one defense and you don't know how your counterpart unit is doing on another field. So like, I think that part's been fun for the guys. Big picture, like it's just an extension of this idea of like, let's have everything we do be about competition, right? So like you get, especially at this point in the spring when you're midway through, a little bit more than midway through, and you're looking forward to the spring game and maybe you're getting a little tired, like it can be a little bit monotonous. And so this was something that staff did to spice things up a little bit. And they have a deal now where they can trade players. Like, so there's a player GM and they can make a few trades and guys are talking smack. And so like it keeps things fresh. And I think it's, it really does emphasize that idea of competition. Like they want to do that in everything they do. I mean, they're competitive in how they prepare meals among players. They're competitive in how much they lift in football drills. And so like this is a part of that, to where like if that's just your default setting, then by the time you get into the season and you get into the fourth quarter of a game, like that's second nature. That's what you do. And so I think it's that. And I think too, Matt Rule has said, and coaches have said, some of it's kind of generational. Like this is a generation that wants to compete. This is a generation that, if you tell them to run 5 laps, no one's going to love it. But if you say, hey, run 5 laps and let's see who wins, something clicks over. So I think that's kind of what you're seeing, is like this motivation piece. And it really does kind of go back to setting the culture that they want this program to be all about too.
That's awesome. How the hell did I not know that we had those other names? Did you guys know that? For real? I didn't.
I mean, the Bug Eaters is, I think, the common one that most people know.
That's
but
what I knew.
Yeah. I honestly don't think I knew that. Yeah. But I'm not surprised you didn't. I'm not surprised.
Okay,
you didn't
I feel
know,
better
Jeff.
now.
Yeah. Jeff, you would be the last one I would expect to know something like that.
I'm kind of into the Rattlesnake Boys. That sounds pretty awesome to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I need to know. I don't know the history of it. Like, I don't think Nebraska is known for its rattlesnake population.
Right?
Maybe it used to be. So I don't know the history of that, but it did used to be called at one time.
Huh. Yeah, maybe out in the West, in the Panhandle, they've got more rattlesnakes. I don't know, but well, Evan, something that I've thought about for a while. Nebraska. We always hear that Nebraska football is the fishbowl, right? Like you hear that almost constantly, and how the players and coaches deal with the fishbowl. And Nebraska fans certainly are, as much as we are loyal, we are also obsessive. We are also rabid at times. And so something that I've been thinking about since we had Brandon Vogel on about a month or so ago, and he kind of brought up the psychological aspect of Nebraska football. Like, it's kind of seemed that every time we're about to take the next step and win a big game, or really lately it's been any game period, it was almost like everybody would kind of go into a little bit of an anxiety attack, or like a panic attack. And, the team, the players, the coaches, the fans, all of us, especially us fans, like we're doing the old like brown paper bag, like breathing into the brown paper bag thing. And then we ultimately usually would end up blowing it. Do you know, like, is Coach Rule doing anything to kind of make this team mentally tougher, or just kind of take on this kind of psychological warfare that it feels like our football program has been dealing with for a number of years now?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Like, I think he's aware of it. Like, first of all, I think Matt Rule himself sets a tone. And I've said this before, but like, if he's in the fishbowl, then he has gills. Like, he can handle it. He can breathe. He can breathe it in. Like, he's very comfortable with that. And I think that's a good place to start, because you think about a lot of the previous head coaches at Nebraska in the last quarter century were not super comfortable as public figures. Certainly Bill Callahan wasn't, Bo at times wasn't, Scott Frost really tried to shy away from that aspect of it. I mean, Matt Rule's out. He'll talk to people wherever he is, buying groceries. Like, it just doesn't faze him in that way. So I think that's a good place to start as the head coach, sort of setting a tone. He's talked about kind of that fine line between not letting the noise in, but also like embracing the expectations and saying that expectations really are a privilege. Like, this idea that you're even in a big game is something that a lot of people would kill to have. And so, like, don't view that as a burden, something that you have to carry, but view that as an opportunity, as like a moment to really ball out, show what you can do, that sort of thing. And so, Nebraska is such an interesting entity, I think, because for some of the reasons you mentioned, Matt, like, the fans are such an asset in so many ways, but the other side of the thing is it almost feels like there's more than just football on the line. Like, I think back to the COVID year and how Nebraska fought so hard to play the season, and part of it was because they wanted to play, but part of it, and Scott Frost at the time said it, and players said it, like they understood the importance of playing to the community from a financial aspect, from an emotional standpoint. Like I think they feel sort of the cultural weight that Nebraska football has. And you combine all that with the fact that, Nebraska is sort of always competing with some of the best teams in program history from the 90s. And it can be hard, right? Like, yeah, you want to get back to a bowl game, you want to end the drought. But people know what happened in the 90s, winning 3 titles in 4 years. That's at a standard that's probably unattainable moving forward. And so, like, how do you juggle all that in your head? I think it is helpful that Matt Rule is new to the area. I think it's helpful to have somebody who maybe doesn't have the full grasp of everything Huskers going back 30 years. And so he can bring a fresh approach while also, I think, embracing the tradition of the thing, because the tradition's great. And that allows you to do a lot of things that a lot of programs can't do. But at the same time, if you're not careful, that thing can be a drag and an anchor when you're trying to do something new moving forward.
Yeah. Well, it certainly seems like from a common fan's kind of outsider perspective, that he's doing what Coach Rule's doing, what he can to just kind of build up some team confidence and some, I just saw earlier this morning on Instagram, they just put out a video of the guys practicing and going through drills, and the caption was just "no fear." Like, just go out there and play and take care of business on the field, and the rest of the stuff will come. So I appreciate your perspective on it, because it's something that I think is absolutely fascinating. So
one analogy I've used, I don't know if you guys play blackjack ever, but it's like if someone's been sitting at a table and they've had bad beat after bad beat, and then some other guy sits down and one hand goes poorly. Everyone else who's been sitting there says, "Oh my gosh, here we go again." And the guy who just sat down said, "It's one hand, look at the odds. It's going to play out fine over the long run." I feel like Rule's the guy who just sat down. Husker Nation is sort of that other guy who's been there and just been getting screwed. The dealer's hitting 21 over and over again when they've got 19.
Hit me again.
And so, like, I think maybe there's something to be said about sort of some fresh perspective that can sort of change that bad juju as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I compare it more to when I sit down at a blackjack table and I hit when I'm not supposed to, and then that dude to my right gets pissed at me because I stole his card. You know that guy? I hate that guy. I hate that guy. We all know that
guy. I'm that guy, Jeff. I am that guy.
You are that guy.
Follow the 100%. Book, Jeff. It's not hard.
I don't know much about blackjack. I haven't played in years, but I remember you were pretty into that for a while there, you degenerate gambler.
That's totally, hey, for anyone listening, especially my children, that's totally made up.
We've done our fair share of obsessing over Dylan Raiola, like most of Husker Nation, obviously. So I'm sure you've heard and fielded a ton of questions about him. But we kind of alluded to this before we even jumped on. There's another freshman quarterback that's been in the news lately by the name of Danny Kaelin. And he seems to be turning heads at spring ball as well. What do you make of this? What's the word on Mr. Kaelin?
So we had, as media, we had an open portion of practice on Tuesday. And, just to kind of lay it out, typically we get, as media, maybe 3 opportunities every spring to, come in and watch like 20 minutes of practice. And typically it's individual work, maybe some positional work, but we really don't see a ton more than that, certainly not a lot of team action. So it was different on Tuesday because we did get to see about 5 to 10 minutes of close to live reps where you had an offense against a defense. They weren't tackling to the ground, but they were doing everything else. And it was kind of funny because initially some of the people that kind of monitor practice said, let's wait a few minutes to let everybody in. And then Matt Rule was like, let them in. Let's just see what happens. And so we come in, we get to see, something closer to how the coaches and players would evaluate things on a daily basis. And so Yeah, it was. I think Kalen clearly had the best sequence that we saw. And again, it was a 5 to 10 minute snippet. They're doing it every day, or every other day. But Kalen, I mean, right away hits Ja'Cory Barney, who's a true freshman, early enrollee, downfield for like 40-yard gain, like mostly through the air, drops a pass in there. Later on, he hits Isaiah Naor, the transfer from Texas, with a little fade over the shoulder, the likes of which Nebraska just couldn't do, or certainly didn't do last year. And then, Raiola, I would say his offensive line didn't protect him quite as well as what Kalen did. He made a couple plays, sort of improvising, misfired on one or two. So in that moment, in that snapshot, yeah, I thought Kalen looked the part. And it sort of, I guess, was a reminder that Daniel Kalen was a highly sought after recruit in his own right. I mean, there were months where Raiola was committed to Georgia, and Nebraska was pretty happy with having Kalen, who had been committed to Missouri previously. He was an Elite 11 guy who went and competed with some of the best quarterbacks nationally in his class and held his own and then some. He was a big part of the recruiting push. And then everyone saw what he did at Bellevue West, too, against some good defenses with some good skill players around him. So, it wasn't shocking, I don't think, by any means, to see what he did, but it was a good reminder that it's not necessarily a given that Dylan Raiola is going to just roll to this thing and it's going to be no contest. I think it was a reminder that there's competition, that there's quality depth, and that, maybe it very may well turn out that Raiola is the starter in the first week. I think that's probably still the most likely outcome, but I think it's a reminder that they have some other talent on this roster. They have another guy who can spin it, another guy who's got sort of the intangibles that you're looking for. And I think it makes the spring quarterback conversation just a little bit more interesting too.
I love to hear that too. Oh, just because in years past, it's just constantly been, I felt like, in my opinion, we've had the starter and then it's just a question mark after that. It's
huge
nice to at least
off. Yeah.
have a conversation that we've got somebody that's always going to be hopefully waiting in the wings. So love it. Love to hear it.
So Evan, just to clarify, you're saying there's a quarterback controversy. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying there's a quarterback competition.
Okay.
No, I mean, I think it's a huge props to Matt Rule for keeping Danny Kalen in the boat after the commit from Dylan Raiola. And then, can you guys hear that? Sorry, I'm getting something in my ear. Okay, as long as you guys can't hear it, then we're good. And then I think it's a huge testament to what kind of person and player Danny Kalen is, that he stuck with his commitment. He stayed home. He knows he's going to be competing every year. It's not like he's a couple years behind Raiola. He knows they're going to competing every year, and he has the confidence to say, "That's fine. I'm coming anyway." I think it's a huge boost to the Huskers, and I just think it's a real testament to both Coach Rule and Danny Kalen. Evan, so recently, and I think it was one of his sort of mailbag things where he was answering some questions, but one thing caught my eye. Sam was asked what Nebraska's record will be going into the Ohio State game. Here was part of his response, quote, "NU could be 7-0. It darn well should be at least 5-2. 6-1 seems right," unquote. Do you care to offer a guess about what Nebraska's record will be going into the Ohio State game? And for the common fans listening who may or may not have the schedule pulled up, we've got UTEP at home, Colorado at home, Northern Iowa at home, Illinois at home. Then we're at Purdue, Rutgers at home, at Indiana, all that before Ohio State.
I mean, it's about as ideal of an on-ramp as you could ask for. I mean, when you look at the reality of the 18-team Big Ten and whatever it might end up being in the future, like, I don't know that you're going to get any more of a favorable on-ramp or starting point to a season than what Nebraska has now. I mean, you might even reach a point where they won't even play 3 non-conference games down the road. So to have this kind of start, to have it at home, and to have it at a year when you're in all likelihood starting a true freshman and easing him into this thing, I mean, it's super ideal, right? Like, how different is that conversation of starting a Raiola or a Kalen if it were last year and you're saying, hey, go start at Minnesota and then go start at Colorado in the first 2 weeks. Like, this is much more manageable out of the gate. And so, Colorado, who knows kind of what they're like. I mean, they have Shedeur Sanders back, and they redid their offensive line through the portal. It's really hard to say what they are. Illinois has been kind of the same team for a handful of years. Purdue had a down year under Ryan Walters, and they're motivated to turn it around, but I don't know that they have the skill necessarily to do it. Rutgers isn't an overly talented team. They're a very physical team. Like, that's kind of their identity. So yeah, I mean, I think it feels, we say this every year, it seems like you can talk yourself into whatever you want to talk yourself into, but yeah, I think if you're 5-2 or any worse than 5-2, like, I'd be disappointed in that. I'd be worried about what happened there. On paper, it looks really good. And like, the things that we know about Nebraska, one thing we know is the defense is really good. The defensive line might be a top 10 defensive line in college football. Like, it's deep, it's big, it's as good as it's been at Nebraska, at least in 10 years, at least to the Randy Gregory era. We know, the offensive line is veteran, one of the most veteran groups in the Big Ten. What we don't know is, what does the quarterback situation look like, and how do the skill guys come together around him? Like, I think there are a lot of really interesting receiver parts to where that'll be a strength. Running back, it's hard to say because guys have been hurt, and they haven't played to contact yet this spring, so you don't really know what you have there. But yeah, like, there's absolutely a path to where they're 5-2, 6-1, 7-0. Like, if it were a lot of teams, I would say sure, but Nebraska and just its history, I'm hesitant to go down that road after so many years. But yes, I mean, I think that's one of the stories of the season, is like, this is the on-ramp to something greater. And we've seen it all the time. We saw it with Michigan last year, starting at home heavy. I always think about 2019 Minnesota, which wasn't a great team, but it played a really home heavy schedule, and it got some wins. And so, like, there was confidence that they then took the rest of the way, that I think made them better maybe than they were supposed to be. And so I kind of get vibes like that from this group, like, build some confidence early, rack up some wins, shift that narrative to where you expect to win games. And then maybe that's when some new and exciting things happen in the second half.
Yeah. Certainly in the quest to get over the hump, have a winning season, get back to a bowl game, those first 7 games are crucial. Like, you've got to capitalize right away. And then, like you said, like, I think worst case, hopefully 6-6, 7-5. But I think if they start rolling and stacking up some wins, I can tell you there's going to be some common fans out there. They're going to have us about 10-2, 11-1 by August 31st.
I'll tell you this much right now. We talked about it last week. If we're 6-1 and we go into that game and we have the bowl game monkey off our back, we're going to go bowling. There's no doubt in my mind. We're upsetting them at home. We're beating Ohio State. It's happening. I've said it before and I'll say it again.
You've already called this. Yeah. You've been out in front on this, Jeff. Yeah.
Oh, Ohio State's going to be really good too. I think it's Oregon and Ohio State kind of would be the favorites in the Big Ten.
Well, and even certainly, I mean, when's the last time we even started with our season opener at home? I mean, it's been like 5 or 6 years or something. At least it feels like that. But we're not on the road at Illinois. We're not on the road at Minnesota. We're not playing in Ireland. Like, I
think it was 2019. I think.
Yeah, I mean, a good old fashioned season opener, home opener in Lincoln.
And it's on a Saturday. Let's get it going. Right? It's not a weird weekday game.
It's not on a Thursday night. Yeah,
it's not in a foreign country.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly.
It's against a team that, in theory, we should beat.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't underestimate the what are they, the Roadrunners, UTEP Roadrunners, or is that UTSA?
The Miners, the UTEP
Miners. Yeah, UTSA is the Roadrunners, I think.
The Rattlesnake Boys.
Well, that's us. We're the Rattlesnake Boys.
Oh, come on, Jeff.
My bad.
Well, Evan, we want to congratulate you. You are now officially, as of this recording, a member of the Common Fan Two Timers Club, which is quite exclusive. You're the third member, joining Zach Carpenter, Z Carp, as we've we've called him, he doesn't know that we call him that, but and also the incomparable Charlie Cologne. So congrats, Evan. Your socks are on the way. And now that you're a member of the Two Timers Club, I feel like we're comfortable enough here with you to ask the following. This is something that I've always kind of wondered about. A lot of you guys in the local sports media, and local meaning Lincoln, Omaha, kind of the Husker coverage guys, went to NU. A lot of you worked at the Daily Nebraskan. A lot of you are alumni. Do you consider yourself a fan of the Huskers, or do you think others in sports media feel that way? I mean, what's that like, trying to balance it between being like an unbiased journalist and providing people what they should hear versus like, going full Homer and being like, because I know you guys, I'm sure you get excited about these things, but you can't be all like we can and just gushing over coaches and players. So what's that like?
So I grew up in Lincoln. Honestly, I didn't start really following Nebraska until I was like middle school, high school. And when I was a freshman and sophomore at the university, it was 04, 05, the first 2 years of Callahan. And yeah, I was in the student section, went to some road games with some friends, and when they lost, it kind of ruined the weekend. And when they won, like you got excited. And so I started covering the team for the Daily Nebraskan in 2006, and I did it for 3 years there. And I would say, as I look back, like it's not a great way to say it, but it kind of beat the fan out of me a little bit, because you're there all the time. And so like what I mean by that is like, I think when you're growing up, like you idolize that, right? Whatever team you're a fan of, you idolize that team, those players, and it's just sort of these larger than life figures. And what I came to experience in college there was like, you know what? These guys are guys like me. Like they're just guys. Like they're incredibly talented players and people, but like they're still people. They're still going to class. They still have their hangups like anybody else. And you kind of see how the sausage is made in terms of like the recruiting process and all the rest. And so like I would say after that point, I went and covered high school sports in Western Iowa for 8 years. And so I would say I followed Nebraska, but I wasn't a fan. I don't think I've been a fan since that time, but I've always been an interested observer. Like and so like when they struggle in recent years, as they have, like I'm curious as to why. Like why do they struggle? What goes into that? And so that's what drives me. If they start winning games, I'm going to be curious about that too. Why do they do it? Let's talk to people. Let's learn the story. Let's do some statistical deep dives. Like, so I think that's kind of where I've come out on it now, is like, it just fascinates me in all aspects of the thing. And so, I don't know, it's kind of a fine line, I suppose, in a difference from being a fan. Like I have a 7-year-old son who's a fan of Nebraska. Like he wants to go to the games and he cheers them on. And so, I support that and I'm with him on that. But like, it's a little bit of a different line. I would say, like, for me, it's not a facade. Like I'm not trying to hide my fandom. Like it truly is just like I'm curious about it. It all fascinates me and I want to learn more, and try to bring some insight into why things are the way they are. And I think most people in the media pool would say that that's the case too. And I will tell you that we joke about this sometimes in the media. Like the one thing that our like friends or people that we interact with in the community will say is, do you go to all the games? Do you go to all the games? And we'll say, yeah, we do go to all the games. But like, that's such a small part of the thing. Like when you're going to practices and hunting down recruits on the phone, like there's so many other things that go into it. So yeah, I guess you can call me the common interested observer, maybe more than the fan.
Okay. Well, I've just always been curious about that, and I'm sure, for you going to the game, any game or all the games, is a completely different experience than us going to game. It's not like you're out, before you have to take notes for whatever piece you're going to write, game recap. you're not out in the parking lot of the tailgate, woofing down a bratwurst and having 3 Coors Lights. You're already in the press box, getting, probably already jotting down notes on what you think you might see that day and things like that. So I've just always been curious about that. You grow up in Nebraska like you, a lot of us would be pinching ourselves sitting at a Monday Matt Rule presser and being like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here, as part of covering this thing that I enjoy and I love. But I completely understand your explanation and your perspective on it. So thank you. Very interesting.
Yeah. I think personally, Evan probably wasn't going to go out into the parking lot. He had brought, he's going to be up in the media area eating the copious amounts of free Valentino's pizza that they continuously give you over and over and over.
Can I tell you something about that? So like that, I don't think I've said this publicly anywhere, but that has actually caused a small rift in my marriage because my wife is a huge Valentino's fan. She loves Val's. And during the season, we get it on Mondays, press conference Mondays, and then after every football game. And so while I'm very thankful and grateful to the university for providing something for us, I get totally sick of it by the end. I'm like, I got to go salad. I got to eat ahead of time. And so like whenever she wants to go to Val's, I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't pay for it. I can't do it.
Exactly. First of all, it's not in the budget. Okay. I mean, you have to
Here we go, Costanza.
You have to close escrow on a Valentino's pizza.
That's right. So we finally over the years have come to an agreement to where like if I'm on a road trip, then that's Val's weekend for her, and she'll go out and get some Val's with maybe her family or friends. And so we figured it out. But there was a time there when I was just like, I can't do it. I cannot have more Val's.
So what's your go-to then if you're gonna get a pizza? You're in Lincoln and you're gonna get a pizza.
Oh, I mean, it depends. I like Yaya's. I'm a big Ramos guy.
Oh, that's good.
As a former Southeast Knight, Ramos down there on 48th and Van Dorn.
Yep.
I could eat that too much for sure with some cream cheese in there.
Oh, sure.
Nice.
So those would be my local spots, I think.
There you go.
Love it.
Nice.
That's super just interesting perspective, Evan. I would imagine most of the time you're sitting in a press box in a beautiful Big Ten stadium somewhere and you're like, man, this is a pretty cool job I get to do. But I would imagine sometimes like it's also a job, and there's Saturdays where, man, I really need to rake the leaves, or I really, my wife's been asking me to fix the doorknob for 3 months now, or whatever. So do you ever have those times too? Or like when you and Sam and Shatel are, climbing into a minivan to drive to, West Lafayette or something? Do you ever have those moments too?
Well, first of all, the Purdue trip is, in my opinion, the worst trip to make because it's hard. You can't really fly there. Like you got to fly to Chicago and then drive 3 hours kind of zigzag through rural Indiana. And then you're in West Lafayette. So like it's that I always think that's been tough. But no, I mean, during the season, if it's a home game, especially, we tend to get Fridays off. Like there's no availability, kind of the haze in the barn at that point. So I try to, I'm the guy who on like a Friday in September at like, 1 o'clock who's mowing his lawn and my neighbors are like, doesn't this guy work? That's that sort of thing. So Fridays and then Sundays tend to be those kind of days away a little bit. But yeah, like it does feel fun 95% of the time. And so like, I always try on game days during the national anthem, like we're standing in whatever press box and you look out. I just try to take a minute and just really try to soak it in and appreciate it and be like, this is pretty cool. Like you get into the rhythm, you get into the kind of what you got to do for the day, but just for a couple minutes, it's just like, you soak it in and it's fun. Like this is supposed to be fun. There's passion here. I try to write in that way to where it's fun and interesting and certainly not boring or laborious. Like nobody follows sports for those reasons. So I think that's been good. And then you guys know, I mean, we're all roughly the same age. Like you have a family, you have kids, like you have to start balancing work life a little bit differently. I think that's true for everybody. And when you have a little bit more of a fluid schedule like this job requires, It takes people who are understanding in terms of spouses and family and all that sort of thing too. So I feel blessed most days to be doing it. And, how much more fun would it be if Nebraska starts winning some games and making things interesting in November?
Right. I would imagine that's a lot more fun to cover too. A good team.
Yeah, no kidding.
No doubt. What's that like?
Someday.
Well, someday.
This
someday.
fall.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, last question, Evan. We here on the Common Fan Podcast are pretty big fans of the Pick Six podcast featuring you and your World Herald colleagues, Tom Shatel and Sam McEwen. And on the last time we had you on, we talked a little bit of Star Wars too. And so I'm just curious, if Shatel is Obi Wan Kenobi, what does that make you and Sam?
Well, I think Shatel would be Yoda because he's been doing it the longest.
That makes sense. Yeah,
that would make Sam Obi Wan.
Obi-Wan.
I don't know that I'm Anakin. Like I wouldn't put myself in that.
No.
You're the Mandalorian.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I was going to say 3PO, so I'll take yours. I think that sounds better.
Oh, no, you're no 3PO.
Or you could be like Han Solo.
Yeah, that's good. Kind of part of the team, but maybe not so involved in the Force. I'll bring a different youthful perspective, relatively speaking.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like that a lot.
Again, I'm Jabba's little laughing guy.
Ooh, that's good.
So that's pretty good.
We need to have you do that every episode, Jeff.
Yeah. It'll be the sign off from now on. GBR for life, and then GF does the.
Don't put that in his head, Matt.
That's good.
Thank you.
All right, Matt, Jeff, any final questions for our distinguished guest here?
No,
thank you
good.
again for coming. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming back and joining us again, Evan.
Well, thank you guys. I'm honored to be a two-timer. I try to approach it like Homer Simpson approaches boxing. It's just hard to knock me out. I keep hanging around. People get sick of it. So I appreciate you guys and what you do too.
Well, thank you. No, we love having you. It's awesome. We really appreciate you spending some time with us. So I think the Common fans will really enjoy this episode. Subscribe on YouTube, Common fans. Check out our page on thecollegehuddle.com. Things are happening for the Common Fan Podcast. So get on board. It's going to be a lot of fun before we go 12-0 this year. We'll be back at you soon. As always, Common fans, GBR for life.